Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Anisha Gupta. Well, this year clearly has been, we have seen curbs on imports and exports of various agri-commodities as India tackled the rising inflation and unseasonal rains. The new year kicking in, experts continue to be cautious on a host of factors that could impact the supply and demand of food. These include the Lok Sabha polls in India, geopolitical conflicts like Russia-Ukraine war and Israel-Hamas war. The government stocks and monsoons is going to be yet another thing that the markets will keep a focus on. That's exactly what we are going to be discussing on today's show on the outlook for the agriculture landscape and its growth trajectory for 2024. To discuss the key facts to watch out for, I am now joined by Sumit Gupta. He's CEO at McDonald Pelz Global Commodities. Sumit, hi, a very happy new year to you, and we hope things improve into this year. But as I was saying, 2023 was marred by weather, war, and then huge volatile moves that we saw in case of agriculture commodities. How would you look at a spillover of all of that in this year as well, and where are the major concerns now?
Hi, Manisha. Good afternoon and very happy new year and a warm welcome from cold Delhi. Manisha, your questions are very pertinent because we are a country of 1.4 billion people, and for government of India, the biggest concern, especially, is food inflation. And considering that we are getting into general election in 2024, food inflation becomes even more important topic. If you look at the history of Indian election, no government has won election when they are fighting the food inflation. And that is where government of India has taken a lot of steps, as you have mentioned in 2023, which entails a ban of exports, allowing imports of pulses till 2025. Government is trying to take a lot of timely steps. And specifically, when you mentioned about the geopolitical aspect, it is a bit of concern because whenever there is a nationalism or the war breaks out, actually it is inflationary world over because the supply chain tends to be shorter. And only 2 years back, we were talking about the surpluses in India, wheat, rice surplus, and we were talking about how to tackle with them. And in 2 years, because of not so good weather and monsoon, we have seen our wheat stocks coming down to as low as 7.5 million tons last year on 1st of April, and we will be touching almost same number this year. And this is a matter of concern for government of India because we have to take care of large population base, and that is where we believe the food inflation is going to continue, and government will have to continue to take a lot of steps to tackle it.
Absolutely. So, Sumit, while we are looking at the Rabi harvest to come in for the month of March, and that's going to be a crucial one as well, where do you see major concerns? Because as of now, we have these government measures in place, whether it's for sugar, rice, wheat, edible oils, pulses for that matter. Where do you see situation improving as we move ahead?
It's an excellent question because government can only make policy and farmers farm. And rest all depends on the nature, weather, and developing factors. If you look at the current acreages, India's pulses acreages is still trailing. And government of India has taken excellent step of letting yellow peas imports in. Why? Because it has given a signal to Canadian farmer to plant yellow peas next year for Indian markets. Now, looking at Indian markets, if you see, it is not. It is also about how the subsoil moisture is panning out. You have to see where we are dropping acreages in wheat and pulses, because these are the two main products which are of biggest concern for government of India. And if we look at the wheat acreages, which on 28th of December is trailing by almost 2%, and chana acreages, which are trailing by 10%, that means even if we get a model yield or the best of yield, even then will not be having a bumper harvest. What does it mean? It means government of India will have to continue with their stock limits and other restrictive measures into the harvest, so that government can procure more wheat for the buffer norms for the stocks and distribution. And chickpeas procurement for government of India will be a challenge, and that's where you might see government of India continuing with relaxed import policies on the pulses side.
Okay.
And yeah.
The other thing clearly is about ethanol and biofuel, and we've seen some concerns come in on that side as well. So whether it's about maize, sugar, rice, how would you read this segment?
Interesting question because it's been said if you want to become a billionaire in India, become a millionaire, put up a feed plant. And if you want to become a millionaire, become a billionaire and put an ethanol plant. Because in a food and fuel debate in a country like India, it is the food which will always win over fuel. And most of the policies which government of India has made, keeping ethanol sector in mind, they were made during the years between 2018 and 21 when we were grappling with food surpluses. And in current context, especially if you look at the commodities from which we can make ethanol, that is broken rice, maize, and sugar. Leaving sugar aside, if you look at the grain complex, both rice and maize prices have rallied significantly over previous year, which is giving good realization one on the to the farmer, but it also making the industry on the starch and the poultry side difficult to procure maize. And that is where we believe going forward, looking at the food availability and the and the weather and the temperature production projection in north of India, which is not very friendly, as IMD has also highlighted, we might see that the grain into fuel will become inflationary, and government will not take such a positive view on that situation going forward.
Absolutely. So, Sumit, a final question. So, when we look at prices for many of these commodities, I mean, as you mentioned that the government has taken measures, will continue to hold them into this year as well. Where is your major concern? I mean, you've said pulses and wheat. Do you think the prices here could rise further? And how are you looking at the prices across the sector?
I will say price is a result, and what we have to see that how, because India is a growing economy, we are at a juncture at which where China was somewhere between 2008-10, and for India to keep on growing, we need two things. One, our food demand is going to grow exponentially, and that's where supply also needs to be continuously increased, either through domestic measure or we have to plan for our protein and grain availability for domestic requirements going forward, either through imports. Number two, my major concern will be how government take futuristic action so that food availability in the country remains ample without impacting farmers' interest. And that is where, coming to the question of prices, we believe food inflation in India is here to stay. All of us have to adjust to the new normal because we have already exhausted most of our stockpiles, and it takes time to build stocks. And we need benign weather in monsoon of 2024, and we know El Nino is continuing, which is not very friendly Indian monsoon usually. So, government of India has a very difficult path to tread going forward, and we are going to see a lot of intervention to control food inflation in future too.
All right, Sumit, thank you so much for joining us. Well, that's a lot of exhaustive conversation really coming in for the Indian inflation there, and very well said that food rather will always be above fuel, and the inflationary concerns still have not eased in India. So there's a lot to watch out for in the harvest season that is going to be in the month of March. But that's exactly the point that Sumit was making, that you need to watch out for a couple of crops, especially like wheat and pulses. To have further discussion on wheat now, let's go across to Ajay Goyal. He's director at Shivaji Flour Mills. Ajay, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, there are concerns when it comes to wheat. And in 2023, the government has tried to ensure that there's enough wheat into the market with their measures. The exports are banned. When you look back at the year on the various measures that the government took, what's your sense on how much have they worked?
So 2023 was a little unusual year because, initial government estimates, the first and the second, were very optimistic. But as it turned out, it was not that great. The crop was probably 5 to 10% lower than most estimates that had come out. And that put the entire market and the government in a bit of a spot. And because of that, the government had to tighten the entire supply chain and step in with an early OMSS so that markets could be contained. And there was also some sort of a supply surety for the markets. So I think it is always the over-optimistic projections that come out sometimes that really misguide the markets. And there was a lot of hope of import opening up so that, we could have an additional 4-5 million tons, which we had actually exported the previous year. And, we could replenish that. But the government had other things in mind, and they kept pushing the can as far as they could so that, there was no imports. And they seem to have managed it quite well with a lot of nervousness in the market.
Ajay, you mentioned about the import duty, and yes, all of last year and many conversations that we had with you also, there was a suggestion that the import duty could be brought down. That hasn't happened. Do you see that happen in this year now?
So I think the larger concern is that we might actually be dipping into our buffer, and next year if we have a similar situation, so the buffer becomes very critical. So what we need as a nation is rebuilding the buffer. So we were in a very comfortable situation 2 years ago, far about 3 times a buffer, 4 times a buffer would be the opening stock. But this time we are just going to end with somewhere around the buffer. So the larger concern is about the buffer, and I think there has to be a way out to replenish the additional buffer that is required in our country.
I'm sure the government would not want to see those numbers there. But 2024 also is an election year. Would you expect the government to do everything right, wheat being an essential commodity, going forward with the free food distribution as well? How do you look at the supply situation?
Also, the supply situation is going to be critical in the coming year. And as I mentioned, we will have to get in some additional wheat into the system so that there's no nervousness in the markets. And, when the market knows that, we are just about there, and so there's a lot of speculative activity, which is not really healthy for the markets. And I think this year we should just scrape through, and the government will definitely be forced to think about how to augment additional supplies into the system, and that will be up to the government. So the larger problem is the government is trying to please everybody. The farmer, we do not know what a reasonable price is for the farmer, for the consumer, and the trade in between, gets grounded in the center, because when the prices are high, government is happy that the farmer is getting a good price, but the consumer is not happy. So it is that absolute number which is the right number, which the trade doesn't know, and only the government knows.
I understand that. Ajay, also, how would you rate the government's open sales scheme? We do understand that we did see lower sales into the market, and that has kept the prices on the higher side. But and what shape can the scheme take going forward?
So the scheme is a well-structured scheme, and of course, the government doesn't open up its gates, for anyone and everyone to come and take as much as they want. They keep giving small doses, but it could be rationalized further into, ensuring that most of the regions where there's a good demand, there is sufficient stock, sufficient up for tender, and people with higher capacity also are able to draw a little more, because somebody is getting 80% of his capacity under the scheme, and somebody gets like 10 or 20% of his capacity. So that is a bit of an anomaly. And if the government rectifies that moving forward, things could look better in the OMSs.
How would you also look at the global situation right now? We did see the wheat prices run up. This is also after India restricted its exports. How do you read the prices now, which have come off by nearly 25 to 30% from its highs?
In the past 2 years, I think the geopolitical situation and up to an extent, the weather is always playing a part. And so it is no longer a freely tradable commodity, as everybody in the world is wanting to build some sort of a strategic stock on and off. And and of course, we have spread out harvests in various parts of the world, and the market is dynamic, but the supply situation globally is at ease. There is no great concern.
With all of that as a background, how would you look at the wheat prices outlook for 2024?
So it's become a big political, it's no longer free trade any longer. And there are watermarks and benchmarks for everything. And month by month, I think somebody is reviewing things and somebody else is deciding where the market should be. But I think it should be a smooth run moving forward with the government taking charge, and they will be having most of the stock in the next crop year as well. So I think they will be dictating where the market should be headed.
I hear you when you say that the wheat is not a free market with government in charge there, but I'm going to still push you for a number, because we did see an all-time high in wheat in last year. What's your sense on the range this year?
So I think we could trade in a range from 25 to 30 ex-Delhi in the coming year, and that should be about the range we should be in, I guess.
All right. Ajay, thank you so much for joining us. Wishing you a great 2024. Thank you for giving us that price view and sense, of course, in that essential commodity. But with that, we'll head into a short break. But coming up, we speak to Sharmila Jain Oswal, who's founder and organic food and millet brand Gudmom, on India's millet story in the year gone by and, of course, the outlook going forward. Welcome back, and we're talking about food, and joining me now to discuss the outlook for 2024 is Sharmila Jain Oswal. She's founder of organic food and millet brand Gudmom. Sharmila, hi, good to have you. A happy 2024 to you. And while the previous year was the year of International Year of Millets, just a look back, and how would you describe that year for India? Because we saw some 80 startups start on when it came to millet. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of programs being done, awareness being created as well. How would you term or explain the year?
Wish you a very happy new year. Thank you so much for inviting me here, CNBC. So 2023, as declared as International Year of Millet, it was a fabulous year, and especially to share that, especially India, they were completely unaware of the word millet. Like, despite they know jawar, bajra, ragi, but still this word millet, it was an alien word. But because of our government and our own prime minister becoming brand ambassador of millet, it became very popular in 2023. And I think ghar ghar har ghar millet. So that story has begun from every home. So 2023 is been a really millet year, and India established and set the precedent as the global millet hub to the world.
Sharmila, how would you say the kind of growth that we've seen in sense of production? Because it's taking some land away from other crops when you are growing more millets. Of course, it's more efficient, more affordable to grow millets. I mean, we all know about all of those benefits, but how have you seen the production numbers increase on a year-on-year basis?
That is the whole, unfortunately, I mean, the supply chain side is being very badly affected, because I think the kind of supply, what we are expecting or what we are looking, so that ratio is not equilibrium to, with the other commodities. So as the demand grown and the policies changed, so let's say on the government level or the army level, so they made the compulsory millets for the army. So suddenly the increase has so much, in a tremendous demand, millet coming in demand. So supply chain is not yet setting that equilibrium. So possibly maybe, now because 2023 started, so this is like a kind of beginning of the whole new era where we are reviving our ancient grain. So I think we needed time, or farmers needed time, or country as on the policy intervention side needed some time. So I think we have evolved. So even though, supply chain is definitely needing attention, but I think, I'm sure farmers or the ground level and from the government side also, the appropriate process, it is in the process pipeline, I would say.
All right. Sharmila, how would you look at the pricing part of it as well? I mean, as you said, availability is still a concern. Demand is being put in place, and there's an increase in demand as well. How are you looking at the pricing part of it?
Yes, pricing part suddenly has like risen up, and in India, it used to be, said, or it was a proverb that jawari is a garibo ka khana. So that wo wali baat to rahi nahi hai. It has become a kind niche. Now the jawar roti or jawar khichdi or jawar noodle, jawar pasta has become a wellness food or a fitness industry or a very niche segment mein aa gaya. So what happened is suddenly that pricing has taken a very leap. But I'm sure
So if you compare it to
Yeah.
last year or a couple of years ago, Sharmila, how much of a price increase have we seen in millets? Is it to the tune of 5 to 7%, or is it double digits?
On retail side, I would say it is multiple times, but
Okay.
on bulk side, definitely 5 to 7%. On a larger bulk side.
Sharmila, how would you look at 2024 now? I mean, I get your point that 2023 was just the beginning. I mean, a lot of firsts were being set when it came to millets. Now, for this year, what do you see panning out as?
So when 23 we began, everybody was like, oh my God, what is happening? There are not 80, but 1,000 startups in India. I mean, and 1,000 is an official figure, I'm saying. But more than that, everybody started into this industry. More than that, corporates, big companies started getting into it. Everybody. So I think with this whole momentum, the gear up. So the whole, the tempo has been like geared up in such a way that everybody, like even you can say any builder or construction industry person also would want to get into the millet. So I think that awareness is strong. Even the people with a lot of their own land, they want to grow millets. So I think we are going on the positive side for growing millets, not only the farmers, but I think from corporate side also, from FPO side, from on the ground level also. So I think that much the progress. So 2024 we are already geared up, we are warmed up, and we are ready for the markets.
Sharmila, when it comes to value addition in millets, the processing that is, and then there is yet another target being set for millet exports as well. As you said, the domestic demand itself doesn't seem to be getting fulfilled right now. How is India going to perform at all these levels?
So overseas, last time also I shared that millet are always seen as a bird fodder or the animal fodder. But now after the millet year, yes, they started like getting aware that okay, it is for the human consumption and the nutrition benefits, and post COVID for the immunity purpose, and the most important thing is food security. So now that attention. So if you will see US or Europe or earlier, I mean India used to export for the as a fodder. So jawar bajra, it's always even proso millet. It has gone as a fodder, but not for the human consumption. But now that value addition product. So for example, millet cookies or millet pasta or millet noodles or any kind of millet khichdi, plant-based milk. In that, I mean millet milk, millet ice creams, and sustainability and climate change. So the whole era, if you see, even including the G20, I mean everywhere it is about that climate resilient or how the carbon footprints or the water smart crop. So I think millet has all that advantages, and I think millet is able to justify that.
A quick final question then, Sharmila. How are you looking at the demand going forward when it comes to the Indian markets? I mean, we've been reading on how there is food that is being introduced into army in various schools as well. There's a lot of nutrition into this as well. So while we have spoken about the price growth that we've seen in last year, but what is the sense on demand growth here?
So demand to as like demand is growing a lot. So even like every state has started like implementing a program, and recently there was a like seed conference, national seed summit also in Maharashtra only it was there. So like there were a lot of positive dialogues, communication on to work on the seeds like fortified seeds, or how do we make the seeds the proper nutrition, because many times the seeds are hybrid and then we are not getting the results. So I think the focus on how to grow on the organic seeds, and then the making the sowing the seeds, and the farmers capacity building of farmers are taking a major crucial role. If you see just recently 1 month ago, Bajra Research Center got launched by the vice president in Badmer, that is in Rajasthan. Rajasthan is the highest growing of Bajra. So same for Gujarat. So similarly for demands, I think every state is working pretty hard, right from the distribution like PDS or the schools or midday meals everywhere. And I think maybe upcoming in some time you will see it is incorporated everywhere. So I think that equilibrium is going to be maintained. It's just that we are in that time. We are just in the, I think, process. Government is doing all the positive things. From the farmer side, they are being very greatly, that awareness has been already done. So
the knowledge
now
being
we are all
imparted,
geared up.
as you said. Well, I get that.
Absolutely,
So there's a
absolutely.
lot happening in the millet push, and it doesn't really end with 2023, which was, by the way, International Year of Millets. And as Sharmila tells us, that next year or this year is going to be as important. As far as the prices go, well, that is something to watch out for, because we are looking at prices increasing many-fold when it comes to millets in last 1 year itself. Sharmila, thank you so much for joining us and making sense of all that's happening in case of millets there. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Commodity Champions. Thank you so much for watching.